Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Old London Bridge by Queen Games.
Old London Bridge is a game in which you are going to be building the London Bridge. And in this game, it is going to involve some action selection, but you're also going to be taking these buildings and putting them into your 3D bridge, and you want to do so in numerical order. So there's a little bit of constricting rules, in which you can't just pick whatever actions you want. You're bound to having to keep this numerical order. It'll make more sense when I show it to you down below and explain the rules, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. All right, here's Old London Bridge from Queen Games. Let me show you guys how this action selection game works, in which you are going to be rebuilding the London Bridge. And each player is going to have an actual 3D bridge in front of them for slots that they will be putting building tiles into. Now, how this game works, you are going to be bidding cards. Whoever bids the highest will get to place their worker out first on one of these spots, selecting a building to put in their bridge, which will then correspond to an action on the board that they can do, ultimately trying to be the player with the most money at the end of the round. How a round works, you will flip over the furthest left token on these gates, and it will show you how many spaces to rotate the rondel. This is a rondel game, by the way. And so we would rotate this 2 spots, and it would show us what each spot is going to give. Now, this spot over here is not going to be available unless you place in the middle. We'll come back to that in just a second. All of the other spots are available, and normally you would think that this is how much money you have to pay. No, this is how much money you receive if you go to that spot. So if I go here, I'm getting $3. If I go here, I'm only getting $1. Now, all players start the game with a 0 card in their hand, and the 0 card is worth nothing, but you always have this card in your hand, so you at least have 1 card. You could combine it with other cards to make people think that you're playing a big number, but it's worth 0. This is the turn order track, and while all of these spots are equal in turns, for instance, this player is ahead of this player, but they are still on the start line. Whoever is in first, the first player, is going to start with weaker cards, but whoever is at the back of the line is going to have higher cards. Now, this is a tiebreaker as well. So if 2 players were to both play a 2, for instance, and that was the highest number played or highest value played because you combine all the cards that you play, then whoever is higher on this track is going to break that tie. So how a turn works, you're going to have cards in your hand, and you will select how many cards you want to play for that particular round, placing them face down in front of you. And once all players have placed their cards face down in front of them, they will reveal their cards. Whoever is the highest is going to get to place their worker out first. And again, this breaks ties. And you'll select where you want to place your worker, gaining that much money from the bank over here on the left side of the board, and then taking the top tile from the stack in which you placed your worker. Now, each stack has a different action that goes along with it. If I place here, I'm going to advance along this track right here, gaining bonuses for each time I pass one of these little markers. We'll come back to the bonuses in a second. If I place my worker here and gain this building, then I'm going to advance along this track, earning money whenever I pass over these bonuses. But again, this is the turn order track as well. I can't place him this particular round, but if I were to, on another round, place my worker here and gain this tile, then I'm going to gain cards. If I place my worker here, I will gain this building, and this building gives me no particular action, but it has a shield of every color on the top of it. We'll come back to why the shields are important in just a second. If I place my worker here, I will gain this building, and I will gain money from the bank. And then lastly, if I place my worker here, I gain the park, which has no specific action with the park, except it gives me a shield and it does not have a number. If you'll pay attention, every other tile in the game has numbers on them, and the numbers are important because I need to go in descending value. So if this was the first tile I took, 58, and 60 is the highest, my next tile needs to be lower than 58. So I might take this 49 on my next turn. On the next turn, I need to be lower than 49. So maybe I take this one here. 16. I need to be lower than 16. If I'm unable to be lower, I have two options. The first is I can take a park. If I am able to take the park and get my worker to the park section first, then I can reset. I place the park there and I've reset. My next building can be any number I want it to be. If, on the other hand, I am not able to get to the park because maybe somebody beat me to it, I can take one of the other buildings, even though it is not lower, but I'm in a bind because I have to replace whatever building this building should be in the line for. So 53, I would not place it ahead of 58 because 58 is higher than 53. So it has to go after 58. I would have to replace 49. So I lose building number 49 here and any shields that were on it, and I replace it with 53. So that's how the order of buildings is important. But let's talk about the shields. Now, every building is going to have shields on it, and the color of the shield is a very important aspect to this game. As you can see here, I have 3 gray shields, so gray is what I'm really strong in, and these buildings, again, they don't have any specific action tied to them, they just provide a shield of every color. So if these were my buildings, and I know the order of the buildings is not right, let's go ahead and fix that real quick. I have 4 gray shields. Now, when I take a tile that has gray on it, that's the strength of the action I get to do. So if I took this tile from this stack, it being gray, I have a strength of 4 gray because I have 4 gray shields. That is how far I advance along this track. If I had taken it from here, that's how far I would advance along that track. If I had taken it from here, 4 is the total of value that I could take from these cards. I could take 2 2s, I could take a 1 and a 3, I could take 1 4, I could take 4 1s. You get the idea. However I want to do that. If I take it from here, a gray tile, again, I have 4, now I have 5 gray tiles. That is how much money I gain from the bank. You get the idea with the colors here. Now, I do have an option if I'm the red player, and if somebody went to the park and I really needed to go to the park too, because the blue player has already gone there, I cannot place my worker on that spot, but I can place him in the middle here. Now, I have to pay $2 when I go here, but having gone there, I can take from any of the stacks, even ones where workers are already at, and even from the pile that is not available for that current round. This is going to continue flipping over a new gate once everybody has taken their tile and placed their new building on their bridge, and rotating the rondel for however many spaces you need to. So in this case, it would be 1. And once you've flipped over all of these gates, that will be the end of the game. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to receive bonuses once you cross these thresholds on this particular track. You have 3 options to choose from, and all of these are equal. There's not differences in values here because of different colors. They're just distributed equally with the 3 different stacks, and you would know what the top of each of these tiles are, and you could take one of these tiles for a bonus, such as being able to place your worker on a spot that there already is a worker. And I could use this at any point in the game, or if I held on to it till the end of the game, it would be worth 1 coin at the end of the game. Again, I get them as I pass these sections right here. If I get my worker all the way to the end of the line, I get 10 points at the end of the game. I mentioned over here you gain money as you cross these. If you can get all the way to the end, you get 10 points. Now, at the end of the game, there is in-game scoring, and unfortunately this is printed in the opposite direction, but I'll try to explain this as best I can. Whoever has advanced on the red track the farthest, they are going to receive a 5 coin bonus. Second farthest will receive 3 coins, And if there are more than 3 players in the game, then whoever finished third will receive 1 coin. This is the same idea, except on the purple track there. You'll receive victory coins, for your placing on that. Cards work the same way. Whoever has the highest amount of cards value-wise at the end of the game. So you spend these cards whenever you get them. If I bid a 4, this card goes back into the pile. I don't get to keep that 4. But whoever has the most in their hand at the end of the game, they're going to receive 5 coins, 3 and 1 for second and third. And then on your bridge, whoever has built the most buildings is going to receive 5 coins, second, third, third 1 coin. And if you did not build a building, so if I did not completely fill up my entire bridge, for every spot that I didn't build, I'm going to lose coins. So if I only missed out on 1, it's only 1 coin. But if I have 5 or more, then I'm going to lose 14 coins, which is devastating. Whoever has the most coins at the end of the game is going to be the winner, and that is how you play Old London Bridge. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one. And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Old London Bridge from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. So Sam, first impressions, seeing this out on the board, what were your thoughts?
It looked interesting. Lots of they're not cards necessarily.
Tiles.
Yeah, lots of tiles. And the bridge itself was really kind of a cool element to it as well.
Yeah, definite 3D element. Gives it some elevation. The tiles stand upright in that, so the buildings look like they're actually on the bridge. That's a cool concept to this game. I think it adds some table presence. What was it like for you learning it and wrapping your head around it and understanding how to play well in this game?
I think it was kind of middle of the road as far as complexity goes. It's definitely not the hardest game I've ever learned, but it did take a little bit of time just because of the numerical order, and then each building color means something. It gets you something.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out the strategy more so than the actual playing of the game.
I would agree with that.
It took more time.
Yeah.
But it was definitely not the most complex game I've ever played.
Now, yes, I would agree. I don't think the rules are very complex, but I think kind of finding your way through the game and finding a way to do well in this game isn't so straightforward, because you do have some track progressions going on. One with the turn order track, the other with getting these bonus tiles that let you do things. And then you have money playing an aspect, which you need money to be able to buy these tiles. And then you need cards to be able to bid to put your token out before everybody else. So, I mean, there's several options. I shouldn't say several. There's a few options. And I think it can be a little bit of kind of wading through this, playing it a round or two, maybe even a full game, to kind of get your head around, how do I get to where I want to be in this game, if that makes sense. So it's not so easy that it's mind-numbing and dull.
No. This really is it's a game that I enjoy a lot personally. Okay. That thinking ahead and strategy planning, but it's not so strategic that it's, makes it not enjoyable.
Okay.
It's looking ahead just enough to figure out what your next move or two is. That's my sweet spot for strategy.
Now, I do think you mentioned the numbers play a huge role in this game, because you only have 6 piles of buildings, and one of those piles of buildings is off limits, so you really only have 5.
Yes.
And you have to go in numerical order unless you're getting a park. But there's only one spot to get a park. And so when you're playing, especially in higher player counts, you can get blocked off pretty easily in this game. How was that for you? Is that frustrating?
It was at times. I do think because of that, playing with just you was probably a little bit more enjoyable, just because you do have more options. And we played with our other friends. I got cut off a couple of times, but I still liked now I got to change my strategy. Now I got to look at this. What are my options? Because it wasn't like you had 0 options after that. You just had to really think through it a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you from my experience in the higher player counts, I felt like I got blocked off a lot. It happened several times where there was maybe 1 or 2 tiles that worked for me and the rest of the tiles absolutely did not work for me. And it was a frequent occurrence that I couldn't get to those tiles quick enough. And that might be my own playing strategy.
Maybe you're too narrow on your strategy.
Maybe I was not playing well enough to be able to get to those tiles. But it happened enough that I felt like, man, I can't get anywhere in this game. Now, does that mean that I didn't enjoy the game or it was a bad experience? Not necessarily. I don't think it was necessarily due to those reasons. I do have some other cons, which I'll get to in a minute, but I think the getting blocked off, it can be a problem for some people, but as you mentioned, Sam, it didn't bother you that too much.
Which is surprising because in general, if you were to have told me that without me playing the game, I would have said that's going to be an issue for a non-gamer.
Yeah.
And again, maybe it was just how I personally was playing it, or maybe I got lucky because we've only played it once with a higher player count. So it's hard to say. In general, I would not suggest non-gamers playing something like that because they're going to feel defeated quicker.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point to make with this one. All right, so let's get to pros and cons on this then. Sam, what were the things that you really enjoyed with Old London Bridge?
I really enjoyed the bridge itself. I liked the numerical order aspect of it. I liked that, especially as you got further on, the colors would get you more things. If you had a certain amount of that color, it would get you something. I enjoyed one of the, what were those called?
The tracks.
The tracks.
The bonus
one
tracks.
Of the tracks, both times I played, I kind of ignored. And one of the tracks, both times I really went hardcore
Hammered it on.
And it boded well for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was just a coincidence or not. But I thought it was a really interesting, different game.
Okay. Yeah. Anything that you didn't like?
There were a lot of choices that had to be made. There's a lot to think through, a lot of strategy. You could get blocked off. The first time I played, I remember having to be reminded, what can this do? What does this one do? What does this one do? And it makes sense. The layout of it makes sense.
I was going to bring that up as a pro for me. Yeah.
But it took some learning it to figure it out. But not a whole lot of cons for me.
I will say I think there's a little bit iconography with the bonus tiles, and you mentioned that she shied away from one of the tracks, and that was the track you shied away from was the one with the bonus tiles that have iconography on those tiles.
Because I didn't want to deal with it.
And the iconography is not super clear. Once you look at it and you wrap your head around it a few times, then it starts to stick. But yeah, definitely the first 2 or 3 times you're playing the game, you're going to have to reference back to the rule book to understand what those tiles are.
If I have to reference things, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. You mentioned the layout of the board. I do think the layout of the board is one of the best things about this playing with a non-gamer because each tile grouping is pointing towards its spot on the board that corresponds to what it does and what it gives you. So the money tiles are pointing straight to the money. The tiles that give you cards are pointed straight to the cards.
And once
that sort of thing.
Figure that out, which took me a second.
Right. And so when you see that, you can remind yourself very quickly, oh, if I draw from here, I'm getting cards. Yes. Or if I draw from here, I'm going up on this track. That is a good decision with the layout of the board, the designing of the board. Some other things.
I was going to say, I wish, one con, I guess, I wish, especially when we were playing with 4 people, there was a tendency for like all 4 of us not to want a specific number or color over and over again. I wish there was a way to like
wipe it,
discard it or something, which I don't know how that would work, but just thinking,
Yeah, I think it's a common occurrence that we feel like in a lot of drafting games where there is a centralized market that there needs to be a way to wipe it to get rid of
at a certain point
undesirable cards or tiles. Yeah, for sure. One thing that I really liked in this game were those bonus tiles. Sam shied away from. I really liked them. I thought they were strong and powerful.
I saw how they benefited other people. It was just more work, whereas the other track was very simplistic. Yeah. And I just...
And that's interesting. She says that was one of my cons, that track has such a... So the turn order track doesn't seem like it should be that big of a deal. And it really shouldn't be that big of a deal, I think. And it's a huge deal. I think it plays a big difference. It determines tiebreakers. You get points based off of it, and it just doesn't seem like it should be as powerful. Maybe that's just because I didn't play into that strategy enough. But I didn't. I'm not very good at this game. That's the other thing too. So maybe I should have totally been going that way. But I don't know, just it's not as flashy, it's not as catchy. I'm not making a good argument against it. I understand that. It just doesn't feel like it should be as important as it is. When you look at money and you look at these bonus tiles and you look at cards, those things make sense for progressing towards the game and winning the game.
I see what you're saying.
This little tiny track shouldn't mean as much as it does, is kind of how I'm coming about it. So, I do also enjoy that you have the ability to change up the in-game scoring benefits for those main buildings, the 4 different main types of buildings. So it gives them replayability. It makes this game different when you play it over and over again. Otherwise, I think it could get pretty samey. And I like how the section that's going to be marked off for you changes every round, and that's a random thing. You're not quite sure how much it's going to turn. It's not just going to turn one to the next one clockwise. So you can't really develop too much of a set strategy. You got to balance that out. You got to be free-flowing with that. So there's some things I do like about it. But ultimately, it just falls a little bit short for me. And I'll get more to that here in just a second. Scale of 1 to 10, love to hate. What are you going to give for Old London Bridge?
I really enjoyed this game. I think it's a good one for non-gamers if you can get past the blocking out. If you can go into it, if you're a gamer, try and play with a non-gamer. Try not to be a butt about it. I think it's a good one for non-gamers. I think they will feel like it's they'll feel accomplished after playing it because it is complicated. There is strategy, but it's easy to understand. And I really enjoyed it. I'd probably give it a 7.8.
Okay. All right. I knew you liked it more than I did. I wasn't exactly sure how much more she liked it than me. I'm a 6.8 on this one. And I think for me, my biggest quib with this game is that I feel like the things that should move me forward in this game, getting money, getting cards. Now, cards definitely does help because it can get me out there first and I can get the buildings I want. But if I'm going to go a card strategy, I have to keep getting the same type of building. And maybe that just doesn't work for me round after round after round. In fact, it definitely doesn't. I need to diversify and get other buildings. It just feels sort of like I'm having to go into different areas and spread my strategy out to other areas that I don't want to do. I don't want to get into.
It is interesting that I won the first time and our friend Christy won the second time, and we're both the non-gamers. So maybe you're just bad at the game.
I'm not good at the game. I will give it that. I'm not great at this game. But I feel like the things I'm doing should work and they're not working for me. So is that a flaw for the game? Is that a flaw for me? Maybe it's both. I don't know. Maybe I'm an idiot, but there's just some things about it that it feels like it should work and it doesn't work. I don't know.
That way.
So 6.8 for me, but because you like it, that's always an added bonus in my book whenever I know that the other people at the table are having a good time with it. So yeah. There you have it. That is our thoughts on Old London Bridge. It is from Queen Games. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about this game.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.